I can still feel the weight of that moment pressing on my chest like it happened yesterday. The heavy double doors of the grand ballroom opened, and I stepped inside with a gift in my hands. I had chosen it carefully, a silver picture frame engraved with the words, "Family, where life begins and love never ends." It was meant to hold one of her wedding photos, something she could treasure for a lifetime. I expected tears, maybe a gasp of surprise, or even just a small smile from my daughter. What I received instead was a blade through the heart. Emily turned toward me in her white gown, a vision of beauty I had once dreamed about when she was just a little girl, playing dress-up in her mother's clothes. But the look on her face wasn't joy. It wasn't love. It was discomfort, embarrassment. And then came the words, "I will never forget. Dad, I'm sorry, but you weren't invited. Please, go." The chatter in the room thinned into a hushed silence. Every judgmental murmur cut deeper than the last. My face burned hot, though my hands felt ice cold. I forced myself to speak, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "Emily, I gave you that necklace. It belonged to your mother. Why is she wearing it?" Gasps flickered through the room. Emily's cheeks flushed crimson, and for the first time, Michael's confident mask wavered. He leaned in quickly, whispering something in her ear. Emily lifted her chin, her voice brittle but firm. I gave it to her. It was a gift to Michael's family. You're being dramatic about old jewelry." Old jewelry, my late wife's sapphire necklace, reduced to a trinket, bartered away for approval. My throat tightened until it was hard to breathe. I studied Emily's face, desperate for some trace of hesitation, some crack in her resolve. But all I saw was pride and fear. Pride in her new circle, fear of losing it if she acknowledged me. I lowered my voice, calm but trembling with grief. "Emily, that necklace wasn't just jewelry. It was your mother's blessing, and now you've given it away like it meant nothing." The silence was unbearable. Guests exchanged glances, some pitying, most entertained. Michael's lips curled into a satisfied smirk, as though he'd orchestrated this entire spectacle. Emily turned her back to me then, her dress rustling like a curtain closing on the final act. I knew in that moment, I wasn't just unwelcome, I was disposable. I stepped back, letting the sting of her rejection burn into me, branding me deeper than any scar. As I turned once more toward the exit, one question clawed at my chest, more suffocating than the shame itself. If she could give away her mother's necklace so easily, what else of our life together had she already handed over? As I walked out of that ballroom, the polished marble under my boots felt like ice. Each step echoed with a finality I couldn't shake. But humiliation has a cruel way of dragging you backward. My mind didn't stay in that ballroom. It carried me decades into the past, to the beginning of it all, when everything I did was for Emily. I could still see her as a child, no more than 5 years old, curled against her mother's chest. My wife, Claire, rocking her gently in the old wooden chair I had built in our first home. Claire's laughter filled the room back then, warm, effortless, like music. Those were the years when I thought love and family could weather anything, but life is rarely that kind. Claire's illness came quietly, stealing her strength in whispers until it roared into something neither of us could fight. The night she told me she didn't think she'd make it, she took my hand with what strength she had left. Her eyes, those same green eyes Emily carried, locked onto mine. "Promise me," she whispered, her voice fragile but steady. "Promise me you'll protect Emily. Give her the life we dreamed for her, even if it cost you everything." I remember pressing her hand to my lips, tears I rarely allowed myself to shed burning down my face. "I swear it," I told her, "with everything I have." And I kept that promise, every single day after she was gone. When other men my age were buying new trucks or setting aside money for retirement, I was working double shifts, construction by day, odd jobs by night. My hands bled more than once, skin splitting against concrete and steel. But I didn't care. Every extra dollar went to Emily's future. Her braces, paid for by weekends I spent hauling lumber until my back screamed. Her college fund, built from nights when I slept in my truck on site because going home cost too much time and gas. Her first car, bought after I sold my father's watch, the only heirloom I had left. Every sacrifice had her name written on it. I can still picture her face the day she got accepted into her dream college. She came running through the door, acceptance letter in hand, squealing with joy. She jumped into my arms, and for that moment, every ache in my body vanished. That's what being a father was to me, pouring everything I had into her happiness. And when it came to her wedding, I didn't think twice. She wanted elegance. She wanted to feel like she belonged in a world that had always felt out of reach. So I gave her that. 3 months of profit from my business gone in an instant, all to rent that ballroom she now claimed I didn't belong in. The dress, $12,000. The flowers, imported from Ecuador. Every detail was chosen with love, and every invoice came through my hands. I paid without hesitation, because that's what Claire asked of me. That was my vow. But now, watching Emily turn away from me, dismissing me in front of strangers, handing away her mother's necklace like it was costume jewelry, I wondered if my promise had cursed me instead of saving her. Did I give her too much? Did I make her believe sacrifice had no cost, that loyalty was optional? The weight of Claire's memory pressed down on me. Her voice still echoed in my head. Protect Emily. Give her the life we dreamed for her. I thought I was keeping that promise. But standing there in the shadow of that ballroom, my daughter's rejection ringing in my ears, I began to wonder if I had misunderstood it all along. Maybe protecting her didn't mean giving her everything. Maybe it meant teaching her the value of love, of loyalty, of family. Lessons I had failed to deliver. And as I walked into the cool evening air, one truth settled over me like a heavy shroud. I kept my vow to Claire, but in doing so, I might have lost Emily forever. Revenge Story, Silent Revenge by Dottie Media said, perfect. Let's move into Beat 4, First Crack of Suspicion, expanded into 650 or 700 words. Still first-person POV, cinematic, with the protagonist in the dignified victim voice, while Michael's parents slip into the charming manipulator archetype. Bop dop. In Beat 4, First Crack of Suspicion, expanded. The night air outside the ballroom was sharp, carrying the faint scent of rain. I thought leaving would dull the sting, but humiliation doesn't fade with distance. It clings to you. I stood in the shadow of the Grand Hotel, my breath fogging in the cold, telling myself it was over. But fate had a different plan. I had turned toward the parking lot when I heard it. Low voices, hushed, coming from the side terrace just off the ballroom. Something in their tone pulled me closer, like a fisherman's hook tugging at a line. It was Michael's parents. They didn't notice me, not in the dark. They were too caught up in their conversation, voices drifting through the cracked French doors. Everything is falling into place, his father murmured, a note of triumph in his voice. Yes, his mother replied. The research paid off. The obituary was the key. The words hit me like a slap. Obituary? Claire's obituary? I edged closer, careful to stay out of sight, my heart hammering against my ribs. The old man won't be a problem much longer, his father continued, lowering his voice. He doesn't fit into this world. Emily will see that soon enough. His wife chuckled softly. She already does. Look at tonight. She turned him away like he was a stranger. Perfect. Exactly as Michael planned. My breath caught. My name wasn't spoken, but I knew. The old man, that's who I was to them. Disposable. An obstacle. I pressed a hand against the cold stone wall, steadying myself as their voices wove a web of cruelty. Emily's desperate to belong, his mother went on. After her mother's passing, she clung to him out of necessity. But now she sees the truth. He's outdated, unsophisticated. Michael gives her the life she deserves. Her words dripped like poison, each syllable crafted to erase everything I had given, everything I had sacrificed. And then came the line that twisted the knife deeper than any other. The obituary mentioned substantial family assets, his father said. Exactly what we needed. Michael played it perfectly. A grieving daughter, an insecure father, and a door wide open. I staggered back, bile rising in my throat. They hadn't stumbled upon Emily. They had targeted her. My wife's death, Claire's obituary, hadn't just marked an ending. It had been the beginning of a hunt. The night seemed to spin around me. Their laughter floated out into the dark, casual, confident, certain of their victory. I wanted to storm through those doors, to confront them, to shout the truth so loudly the chandeliers would rattle. But I didn't. Something held me back, something colder, sharper. I remembered Claire's last words, protect Emily. And I realized that protection didn't mean blind defense anymore. It meant seeing the enemy clearly. It meant patience, strategy. So, I stayed hidden, letting their words brand themselves into my memory, each one a nail sealing the coffin of my old life. When their conversation faded and the doors closed behind them, I stood frozen in the darkness, my fists clenched so tightly my nails cut into my palms. For the first time that night, my humiliation shifted into something else, an ember glowing in the ashes of my shame, suspicion, rage, and beneath it all, a single vow rising stronger than the rest. If they think I'm the old man who won't be a problem, they've already underestimated me. I could have walked away. I should have. But something in me refused to let it end with whispers and smirks. Guests in expensive suits and glittering gowns turned their heads, whispering behind crystal flutes of champagne. My feet felt rooted to the marble floor, my chest rising and falling too quickly as if I'd forgotten how to breathe. I swallowed hard, forcing a calm tone into my voice. Dignity, I told myself. Hold on to your dignity. Sweetheart, it's your wedding day. I just wanted to congratulate you both. That's all. But before Emily could respond, Michael appeared at her side, perfectly tailored tuxedo, hugging his tall frame, his smile sharp as a razor. Mr. Clark, I think there's been a misunderstanding, he said smoothly, his hand slipping around Emily's waist like a lock on a prison door. This celebration is, well, it's for immediate family only. Immediate family. The word stung like acid. 28 years of bedtime stories, of scraped knees and whispered prayers at night. And suddenly, I wasn't immediate family anymore. Not when I had just seen that necklace glinting under the chandeliers, the one piece of Claire's legacy I thought was safe in Emily's hands. My boots carried me back inside, steady but heavy, like I was walking into a battlefield. The music still played, violins swelling as if mocking me, but the laughter had returned to normal now that I was out of sight. I scanned the crowd until I spotted Emily standing near the dessert table, her hand resting lightly on her gown, as though she were posing for a magazine cover. Michael hovered beside her, ever the sentinel. I drew a breath and approached. My heart pounded, not with fear, but with something closer to grief boiling into anger. Emily, I said softly, but firmly enough that she turned. We need to talk. She blinked at me, her face flushing with irritation. Dad, I told you. I raised a hand. I won't embarrass you. I just want an answer. My eyes flicked toward Michael's mother across the room. Why is she wearing your mother's necklace? Emily stiffened. Her gaze darted briefly to Michael, who shifted, his jaw tightening. She swallowed, then forced a brittle smile. Oh, that. I gave it to her. It was a gift to Michael's family. You're being dramatic about old jewelry. Old jewelry. The words hit like a hammer against my chest. That necklace wasn't just an accessory, it was Claire's. The last gift I had given her before Emily was born, passed down through her family. When Claire died, I placed it in Emily's hands with trembling fingers and said, "Keep this close, it's your mother's blessing." And now, it hung around the neck of a woman who looked at me like I was dirt under her shoes. I steadied my voice, though each word scraped like broken glass. Emily, that necklace wasn't just jewelry. It was your mother's. It was meant for you to carry her into this day. She shifted uncomfortably, her fingers tightening around her clutch. But instead of remorse, I saw something colder, defensiveness. Dad, stop! You're making a scene. Michael's parents are family now. They deserve something meaningful. My throat burned. And what about me? Don't I deserve to be here? Don't I deserve to see my daughter married, after everything I've given? Her eyes finally met mine, and for a split second, I saw something flicker. Shame, maybe, or doubt. But then Michael leaned in, his voice low but sharp enough for me to catch. He doesn't understand Emily. He never will. That broke something inside me. I wanted to shout, to demand she explain how she could betray not only me, but her mother's memory. Instead, I forced myself to remain calm, to keep the steel in my spine even as my heart crumbled. You've given away your mother's necklace, I said, my tone low but deliberate. And maybe you think it's just a piece of jewelry, but it's more than that, Emily. It's a sign that you're giving away pieces of yourself that you don't even realize you're losing. Her lips trembled, but she turned her face away. The conversation was over for her. For me, it had only just begun. I stepped back slowly, my eyes locking one last time on the necklace across the room. I slipped my phone from my pocket, my fingers steady despite the storm inside, and snapped a picture of Michael's mother wearing it. Evidence, proof. If Emily wanted to dismiss me, fine. If Michael wanted to cast me out, fine. But that necklace, that betrayal, lit a fire in me that humiliation alone could not. Because if she could give away her mother's blessing so easily, what else had she already handed over that I didn't know about? The ballroom felt smaller with every breath I took, though the ceiling stretched high above, dripping with chandeliers and golden light. The laughter, the whispers, the music, it all blended into one suffocating noise. I knew I couldn't stay. Not one more second. I turned and walked toward the exit, each step heavier than the last, the sound of my boots echoing against the marble like a drumbeat of finality. Guests shifted to make way, some curious, some pitying, most indifferent. Their gazes clung to me like static, but I refused to lower my head. When I reached the grand doors, I paused. Something in me needed to look back, one last time. Across the room, Emily stood surrounded by Michael's friends, her smile forced, her laugh hollow. She clutched his arm tightly, as if anchoring herself to his world. My daughter, my little girl who once clung to my leg in crowded rooms, now clung to a man who had convinced her I didn't belong. And then my eyes fell on Michael's mother again. The sapphire necklace shimmered beneath the ballroom lights, stolen history displayed like a trophy. That image seared itself into me, a brand I would carry until the day justice was served. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. With one quick, steady motion, I lifted it and snapped a photo. The soft click of the shutter was drowned out by the music, but to me, it sounded like the cocking of a gun. Evidence, proof, the first step. I slipped the phone back into my jacket and whispered so softly no one else could hear. They think I'm powerless. They're wrong. As I pushed through the doors and stepped into the cool night air, the city stretched before me, glittering, indifferent, alive. I inhaled deeply, letting the cold sting my lungs, washing away the stench of humiliation. For hours I had been drowning in shock, in grief, in disbelief that Emily, my Emily, could reject me so publicly. But as I stood under the night sky, a shift happened inside me. The pain didn't fade, but it hardened, like molten metal cooling into steel. I thought of Claire again. Her voice still lingered, fragile but fierce, from that hospital bed decades ago. Promise me you'll protect her. At the time, I thought protection meant sacrifice, giving everything, even when I had nothing left to give. Tonight I realize protection sometimes means fighting back, not with fists, not with rage, but with patience, strategy, and the truth. Emily may not see it yet, blinded by Michael's charm and his family's poisoned promises. But I would not let them strip away what little remained of Claire's legacy, of our family's dignity. I tightened my coat against the wind, my hands steady now, not trembling. The humiliation of the wedding would not be the end of my story. It would be the beginning of theirs. As I walked toward my truck, parked at the far end of the lot, the vow settled deeper into my bones. I will not be erased. I will not be discarded. They may think I am finished, but I am only beginning. And when the time comes, they will regret underestimating me. The engine roared to life as I turned the key, headlights cutting through the darkness. For the first time that night, I didn't feel like prey. I felt like a man who had finally seen his enemies clearly. I drove off into the night with nothing but questions burning in my mind, questions I would not rest until I answered. What else have they taken, and how far are they willing to go? The morning after the wedding, I sat at my kitchen table, the gift I never gave still sitting in its silver wrapping. Sunlight streamed through the blinds, but it didn't warm me. My coffee went cold before I even touched it. I couldn't shake the image of that necklace. The way Emily brushed me off, as if her mother's memory was just an inconvenience. The way Michael's parents whispered about me, like I was an obstacle they'd already removed. I knew humiliation alone wouldn't destroy me, but suspicion, that was different. Suspicion could lead to answers, and answers could lead to truth. I went to my office that morning, pulling out boxes of financial statements I hadn't looked at in months. Receipts, property deeds, business accounts. I kept everything. Years of hard work had made me cautious, maybe even obsessive about records. For the first time, I was grateful for that habit. As I flipped through the files, something caught my eye. A property deed, the wedding venue itself. Months earlier, I had purchased the lease as a wedding gift for Emily. It wasn't cheap, but I wanted her to have something permanent, a place she could point to and say, this was where it all began. But now, the deed bore a different name. Not Emily's, not mine, Michael's. I blinked, my fingers tightening around the paper. I dug deeper. Another transfer. My lake cabin, the one where Emily learned to fish, where Claire and I spent our last summer together, signed over, to Michael. My pulse thundered. I rifled through statement after statement. There were withdrawals, transfers, adjustments I had never authorized. Slowly, a horrifying picture took shape. It wasn't just the necklace. It wasn't just humiliation at the wedding. This was calculated, coordinated. I picked up the phone and dialed Richard, my financial advisor. He'd been with me for years, a steady hand I trusted. Richard, I said, forcing calm into my voice, I need you to walk me through every transfer from my accounts in the past year. Every property deed, every trust adjustment, everything. There was a pause. Is something wrong? Just do it, I said. My voice was low, controlled, but inside, my heart was racing. 2 hours later, Richard sat across from me, his laptop open, eyes scanning numbers with increasing unease. Clark, he said finally, rubbing the bridge of his nose, this doesn't make sense. Half your assets, properties, trusts, even liquid accounts, have been moved into joint holdings. Not with you, with Emily. And now, he hesitated. Emily's eyes darted nervously to the crowd behind me, to the women in sequined gowns craning their necks for gossip. I saw the flicker of shame in her expression, but instead of standing by me, she nodded faintly at Michael's words, confirming my exile. I tried again, softer this time, my voice breaking at the edges. Emily, I paid for this wedding. Every flower, every plate, even the dress you're wearing. I only came to share this moment with you. Michael's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing ever so slightly. Money doesn't buy belonging, sir, he replied, with just enough venom under his polite tone to let me know exactly how he felt. The room seemed to shrink around me. I looked at Emily, desperate for some glimmer of the little girl who once begged me to push her higher on the swing, shouting, "Higher, Daddy, higher!" But her lips trembled into a rehearsed smile, one meant to appease the wealthy crowd watching us, not her father. Whispers swelled. Why now they're under Michael's sole management. I leaned forward, my hands pressed flat against the desk. When did this start? Richard scrolled back. The first transfer? The day after your wife's obituary ran in the paper. The room tilted. I gripped the desk to steady myself. The timing matched exactly what I'd overheard last night on the terrace. They had used Claire's death as their entry point. They had studied me, mapped out everything, and then moved in like vultures. My blood ran cold, but anger simmered hotter beneath it. Richard looked at me carefully. Clark, did you sign these? Some of the signatures look questionable. I took the papers from him, staring at the loops and lines. They were close. Close enough to pass at a glance. But they weren't mine. Forgery. My humiliation hardened into fury, but it was a quiet, razor-sharp kind of fury. The kind that no longer cared about being invited or excluded. The kind that wanted truth carved into stone. I set the papers down and looked Richard square in the eye. This isn't just a mistake, it's a betrayal. For a long moment, silence hung between us. Then I straightened, my voice steady. They think I won't notice. They think I won't fight back. But they've forgotten who built all of this. Every brick, every nail, every dollar, I made it. And now, my eyes dropped to the stack of forged deeds. I'm going to take it back. The papers on my desk blurred as I stared at them, my vision tunneling. Property transfers, forged signatures. Assets moved as if I were already dead. But the part that kept echoing in my head wasn't on any page. It was what I'd overheard on that terrace. The obituary was the key. They hadn't just targeted Emily. They had used Claire's death as a roadmap. I needed more than numbers. I needed proof. Not just for myself, but for the fight I knew was coming. So, I picked up the phone and called an old friend, Jim. Jim wasn't just a friend. He was the kind of man who knew people. Retired cop, sharp instincts, never asked questions he didn't want the answers to. "Jim," I said, my voice low, steady, "I need a private investigator, someone you trust." He didn't hesitate. "I know a woman, discreet, sharp as they come. She'll find what you're looking for. What's the target?" I closed my eyes for a moment, as swallowing the bitterness. "My son-in-law, Michael." 2 days later, I sat in a quiet diner booth across from Sarah, the investigator Jim recommended. She was mid-40s, sharp eyes behind thin glasses, the kind of person who made you feel like you were already under oath. She slid a folder across the table. "You were right to call," she said simply. I opened it, and my breath caught. Inside were photos, records, online search histories pulled from data sweeps. Michael, months before meeting Emily, combing through public records, news archives, even Claire's obituary. "He specifically searched your wife's name," Sarah explained, tapping a highlighted entry. "From there, he dug into probate filings, asset records, even property tax databases. He knew exactly what your family owned before he ever met Emily." I flipped to another page, screenshots of Michael's old dating profiles. Not just one, several. Each one targeting women with keywords like widowed, inheritance, family business. Sarah leaned back, arms crossed. "Your daughter wasn't just charmed, she was selected, hunted." The diner around me faded. Forks clinked against plates, coffee cups hissed as waitresses refilled them. But I heard nothing beyond the roaring in my ears. Hunted. My daughter, Claire's only child, had been prey from the start. I clenched the folder, my knuckles white. My voice was low, but it carried a weight I hadn't felt before. So, it was never love. It was never about her. Sarah's gaze softened, just slightly. "People like Michael don't marry for love. They marry for access." The words hollowed me out. For years, I had blamed myself for not giving Emily more stability, more status, more of the life she thought she lacked. And now, I saw the cruel irony. It was precisely what I had built, what I had sacrificed for, that had drawn the predator to her door. I closed the folder, exhaling slowly. The grief was still there, but it was no longer directionless. It had teeth now. "Thank you, Sarah," I said, sliding the folder back toward me. My voice was steady, even calm. But inside, something had shifted. I wasn't just a father anymore. I was a hunter, too. As I stepped out of the diner into the evening air, the city lights flickered on, one by one. My reflection stared back at me in the glass window. Lined face, tired eyes, but something sharper than I'd seen in years. Michael thought he had chosen the perfect target. He thought I was the weak link, the grieving old man too blinded by love for his daughter to see the knife at his throat. He was wrong, because now I had proof, and proof was the beginning of war. I drove home from the diner with Sarah's folder on the passenger seat, the streetlight streaking across its manila cover like warning flares. Inside that folder wasn't just evidence, it was clarity. For the first time, I saw Michael for what he was. Not just a manipulator, but a predator with a pattern, and predators only stop when someone makes them. I knew I couldn't do this alone. So I picked up my phone and dialed the one man who had stood beside me through more storms than I could count, Jim. He answered on the second ring. "Clark, I've been waiting for your call. What did she find?" "Everything," I said flatly. "Michael hunted Emily. He searched Claire's obituary, tracked down our assets, even tailored his dating profiles to target women like her. Emily wasn't special to him. She was prey." Jim exhaled slowly, a sound that carried both anger and grim satisfaction. "Then it's time you stopped playing defense." He was right. I had been reacting, stumbling from one humiliation to the next. But now I had a choice. I could either keep bleeding, or I could fight back. The next morning, I sat in a law office downtown. Dark wood paneling, leather chairs, diplomas lining the walls. Across from me sat Sarah, not the investigator, but Sarah the attorney. Jim had insisted on introducing us. She extended her hand firmly. "Mr. Clark, I've reviewed the documents your advisor flagged and the material from your investigator. What we're looking at isn't just unethical, it's criminal. Forgery, fraud, coercion." Her words steadied me. Criminal, not just betrayal, not just family drama. Crimes. I leaned forward, my hands clasped. "Then we go after him with everything we've got, but we do it by the book. No shortcuts, no mistakes. I want the law to bury him." Sarah nodded, her expression unwavering. Then we start here. She slid a thick folder toward me. Inside were charts, timelines, asset maps. Every deed, every account, every trust you've built. Michael has tried to put his name on them, but he's sloppy. There are gaps in the signatures, timestamps that don't match. He's overplayed his hand. I felt a grim satisfaction tighten in my chest. Overconfidence. The downfall of men like Michael. And it gets better, Sarah added, flipping another page. Your investigator discovered this isn't the first time. He's done it before, twice. I stared at the page, my jaw tightening. 2 other young women, both daughters of widows with substantial inheritances. Both swept into quick romances, both left in financial ruins when Michael moved on. Patterns. Predators always leave patterns. Jim leaned against the wall, arms crossed. We put those women on the stand. Let the world see Michael for what he is, a serial thief with a charming smile. The fire in my chest burned hotter. He thinks he's clever. He thinks he's untouchable. But predators leave trails, and this time, he picked the wrong family. Sarah met my eyes, her voice calm, but edged with steel. We'll file for an injunction to freeze the assets immediately. That keeps him from moving anything else. Then we prepare civil suits for fraud and criminal charges for forgery. It won't be quick, but it will be thorough. I nodded slowly. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt something close to control settling back into my hands. This wasn't just about saving money or reclaiming property. This was about reclaiming my dignity and Claire's memory. I rose from the chair, the folder under my arm heavy but solid, like a weapon forged for war. Thank you, I told Sarah. My voice was quiet but certain. Now, let's make him answer for what he's done. As I walked out of the law office into the crisp afternoon, the city noise buzzing around me, one thought kept replaying in my mind, sharper than all the rest. Michael thought I was the old man who wouldn't fight back. He's about to learn I've only just begun. The legal strategy was taking shape. With Sarah's sharp mind and Jim's steady support, I finally felt the ground beneath me again. But even in the midst of building this case, there was one thing I couldn't silence: the ache for my daughter. No matter how much evidence I stacked against Michael, no matter how many documents proved his guilt, a piece of me kept whispering, Emily isn't him. She can't be him. So, when my phone buzzed one evening with her name flashing across the screen, my heart skipped. It had been weeks since she'd spoken to me without coldness or dismissal. I hesitated before answering, afraid of what tone I'd hear. Her voice was softer than I expected. Dad, can we meet? Just the 2 of us. I caught snippets. Is that her father? Why isn't he invited? This is awkward. And then, as if fate wanted to twist the knife deeper, I noticed something. Michael's mother stepped forward from the crowd, her hand glinting in the chandelier's light. My breath caught. Around her neck was a sapphire necklace, my late wife's necklace, a family heirloom I had given Emily for her something blue. My hand tightened on the gift box until I thought the glass inside might shatter. The humiliation was complete. Not only had my daughter denied me in front of strangers, but she had handed over one of the last treasures her mother left behind, given it to the very people who were pushing me out. The violinist kept playing, unaware of the storm tearing through my chest. My throat burned, but I forced myself to stand straighter, to keep my voice level. You're right, I said quietly. I don't belong here. I need to talk. I sat there, the phone pressed against my ear, unsure if my heart was racing from joy or dread. Of course, I said quietly. Name the place. She chose a cafe downtown, neutral ground, small, quiet, tucked into a corner street where nobody from Michael's glittering circle would bother to go. When I walked in, Emily was already there. She looked tired, eyes ringed with shadows, her posture stiff. Not the radiant bride I'd seen at the wedding, but something closer to the daughter I remembered, fragile and human. Thank you for coming, she said, almost whispering. I sat across from her, searching her face for cracks in the armor Michael had built around her. Emily, I'd come anywhere for you. Always. For a long moment, she just stared at her hands wrapped around a coffee cup. Then she sighed. Dad, I don't know how we got here. I don't want us to fight. My chest tightened. This was what I had prayed for. An opening. We don't have to fight, sweetheart. I've only ever wanted to protect you, to make sure you're happy, safe. Her eyes flicked up to mine, glossy with something unspoken. Michael, he's good to me, Dad. But sometimes I feel like I can't breathe, like I don't belong in his world either. The words were a crack in the wall, faint but visible. I reached across the table, my hand covering hers. Emily, listen to me. You don't need to twist yourself to fit into anyone's world. You are my world. You always have been. And no matter what he tells you, I will never stop being your father. Her lip trembled, and for a second I thought I saw the little girl who once crawled into my bed after nightmares, whispering, "Don't leave me, Daddy." But then her phone buzzed. She pulled her hand back quickly, glancing down. Her shoulders tensed, and the softness in her face hardened. "It's just Michael," she muttered, but her voice betrayed her. Nervous? Caught? I sat back slowly, my stomach knotting. "Emily, are you afraid of him?" She shook her head too quickly. "No, of course not. It's just, he wants me to check in, that's all. You know how he is." I did know, and the pit in my stomach deepened. Still, I clung to the hope flickering inside me. "You don't have to be afraid to tell me the truth, Emily. If you're in over your head, I can help. That's all I've ever wanted, to help." Her eyes welled again, and she whispered, "I just don't want to lose you, Dad." For a moment, time froze. The cafe around us blurred into silence. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that somewhere under Michael's shadow, my daughter was still there, reaching for me. I reached across the table one more time, my voice low and certain. "You'll never lose me, not unless you walk away." She nodded faintly, but her hand never left her phone, and as I watched her tap out a quick message under the table, dread coiled in my gut like a snake. Something wasn't right. This didn't feel like reconciliation. It felt like rehearsal. For 2 days after that cafe meeting, I carried a fragile hope in my chest. Emily's words replayed in my mind. "I don't want to lose you, Dad." It wasn't much, but it was enough to convince me there was still a chance, a thread left to repair between us. Then Sarah called. "Clark," she said without preamble, her voice tight. "We've got a problem. Come to my office now." I drove over in silence, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles ached. When I arrived, Sarah was waiting with a laptop open on her desk, files scattered like broken glass. She turned the screen toward me. "You need to see this." It was audio, tinny at first, then clear, my voice. "Emily, listen to me. You don't need to twist yourself to fit into anyone's world. You are my world. You always have been." I froze. Those were my exact words from the cafe. Every syllable, every pause. Sarah clicked to another file, my voice again. "If you're in over your head, I can help. That's all I've ever wanted, to help." And then Emily's voice, softer, shakier. "I don't want to lose you, Dad." The cafe. She'd recorded everything. My chest tightened, heat flooding my face. How did you get this?" Sarah's jaw clenched. "Michael's legal team filed it preemptively, Clark. They're preparing for litigation. These recordings are evidence to them. Evidence that you're interfering, manipulating your daughter against her husband." The words stung like acid. Manipulator? Me? After decades of sacrifice? Sarah leaned forward, her tone sharper. "This wasn't reconciliation. It was entrapment. She was feeding you lines, and Michael was feeding her." I sank into the chair, my body suddenly heavy. Emily's nervous glances at her phone, the way she clutched it like a lifeline. It all made sense now. She hadn't been reaching for me. She had been performing for him. My hands trembled, but not from grief this time, from fury. Cold, controlled fury. Even her apology, my voice cracked before hardening into steel, was a lie. Sarah's eyes softened, but she didn't look away. "I know this hurts, Clark, but listen to me. It also helps us. These recordings prove premeditation. Michael can't claim innocence when he's coaching his wife to entrap her own father. They wanted to weaponize your love for Emily. Instead, they've handed us the evidence of their scheme." I stared at the laptop, at the lines of audio files stacked one after another. Proof of betrayal. Proof that the one person I thought I could still reach had chosen his side, even if she didn't fully understand what she was doing. For a long time, I said nothing. The hum of the computer fan filled the silence, underscoring the hollow in my chest. Finally I spoke, my voice low and even. "They wanted me broken. They wanted me silenced. But now I'm done hoping. From this moment on, it's war. I stood, the chair scraping hard against the floor. Sarah watched me carefully, nodding once. "We'll use this against them," she said firmly. "The recordings, the forged documents, the other victims. We'll build a case so airtight, Michael won't just lose your assets, he'll lose everything." I closed the laptop gently, my reflection staring back from the black screen. My eyes looked older, harder. The man staring back wasn't the same father who walked into that wedding with a gift in his hands. That man was gone. What remained was a father who had been humiliated, stripped, betrayed, and who now carried the one weapon Michael never expected: cold, unrelenting resolve. The day after Sarah played me the recordings, I woke before dawn. The house was silent, the kind of silence that presses against your chest. For weeks that silence had felt like grief. Now it felt like clarity. I brewed coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and laid everything out in front of me. Forged deeds, transfer statements, Sarah the investigator's reports, and now Emily's recordings. Each page was a scar, each file a betrayal. Together, they formed a map of the trap Michael thought he had built for me. But predators rarely notice when the ground shifts beneath them. By 9 o'clock, I was back in Sarah's law office. Jim was already there, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, his eyes hard. Sarah had cleared her desk, laying out folders in neat, lethal rows. "Clark," she said, gesturing for me to sit. "This is how we move forward, and we move now." She opened the first folder. Step 1, injunction. We file immediately to freeze all assets that were transferred under questionable signatures. That stops him from moving money offshore or liquidating property while we fight this. She slid another folder forward. Step 2, civil suit for fraud and undue influence. We'll use the forged documents, the timing after your wife's obituary, and the investigator's proof of targeting to demonstrate intent. Jim added, "And don't forget the other victims. Once they testify, it's not just you crying foul. It's a pattern, a predator exposed." Sarah nodded. Step 3, criminal charges, forgery, fraud, conspiracy to commit financial exploitation. The DA will be interested once we show the scale. I studied the folders, the paper heavy under my hands. This wasn't speculation anymore. This was war strategy laid bare, legal and precise. "And the recordings?" I asked, my voice quiet but steady. Sarah's lips curved into the faintest smile. Step 4, turn their weapon against them. They wanted to paint you as manipulative. Instead, we'll prove coaching and entrapment. Those files will show Michael's fingerprints all over this. For a long moment, I sat in silence, my fingers tracing the edge of the table. The father in me still ached, still heard Emily's voice whispering, "I don't want to lose you." But the strategist in me knew the truth. She had chosen her side, even if she hadn't realized the cost yet. I straightened in my chair. File it all. Freeze everything. If he thought he could take my life's work, then let him try explaining himself to a judge. Sarah closed the folders with a decisive snap. "It begins today." Jim pushed off the wall, his voice low but firm. "Clark, you know once this starts, it won't be quiet. It won't be clean. They'll come after you harder." I met his gaze without flinching. "Good. Let them. I've spent too long on the defensive. It's time he learns what it feels like to be cornered." We walked out of that office together, the afternoon sun glaring bright against the glass windows of the courthouse across the street. For years, that building had been just another landmark to me. Now, it looked like the arena where my enemies would finally face the truth. I set the gift box down on a nearby table, among untouched glasses of champagne and white orchids, then turned toward the exit. My boots echoed against the polished marble floor, heavy and deliberate, as if each step carried the weight of decades of sacrifice slipping away. Behind me, laughter resumed, thin, artificial, the kind that people use to cover discomfort. Ahead of me, the massive doors loomed like the gates of a world that had just closed me out. And yet, beneath the pain, beneath the shock, a question began to stir in my mind, a small, nagging thought that made my stomach twist. How could my own daughter do this to me? I wish I could tell you that walking away ended the nightmare, but humiliation has a way of clinging to you, like smoke that refuses to wash off. The moment I turned to leave, Whispers rippled through the room like a wave breaking against rocks. As I stood there, folder in hand, one thought settled into me with iron certainty. Michael had turned my daughter against me. He had stolen from me, mocked me, underestimated me. But he had made one fatal mistake. He left a trail, and I was going to drag him down it, step by step, until there was nowhere left to run. The courthouse was colder than I expected, not in temperature, but in atmosphere. Marble floors, high ceilings, the faint smell of paper and polish. It felt like stepping into a cathedral of judgment, and in a way, it was. I sat at the plaintiff's table beside Sarah, my lawyer, a mountain of binders stacked neatly before us. Each one was filled with months of sacrifice, decades of records, and weeks of investigation. Proof. Across the aisle sat Michael, polished as ever in his tailored suit. He leaned back in his chair, confident smirk plastered on his face. His arm draped possessively over Emily's chair. She looked smaller somehow, her shoulders tense, eyes darting between me and him as though searching for a safe harbor. When the judge entered, the room hushed. My heart thudded hard, but my hands were steady as I placed them flat on the table. This wasn't humiliation anymore. This wasn't begging for a place in my daughter's life. This was battle. Sarah rose first, her voice calm, measured. Your Honor, we will show a consistent pattern of fraud, undue influence, and forgery committed by Michael Whitmore, designed to strip my client of assets accumulated over a lifetime of work. We will prove that this was not an isolated event, but part of a calculated scheme repeated against multiple families. She opened a binder and held up the first piece of evidence. A deed transfer. My deed. My signature. Except not mine. The judge studied it, then raised his eyes. You're saying this signature was forged? Yes, Your Honor, Sarah said, sliding forward expert testimony from a handwriting analyst. And not just once, repeatedly. Michael's attorney objected, his voice sharp. But Sarah was ready. She flipped to the next page. Bank transfers, time-stamped within days of Claire's obituary being published. And then the audio files. The room shifted when the first recording played. My own voice filled the chamber, soft, fatherly. Emily, listen to me. You don't need to twist yourself to fit into anyone's world. You are my world. For a moment, shame burned in my chest. But then Sarah hit play on the next clip. Michael's voice, cold, instructive. Ask him about belonging. Make him admit he feels left out. We'll use it against him. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The judge's eyebrows lifted. Emily froze, her hands tightening in her lap. And then came the final blow. Two women entered the courtroom, Michael's previous victims. Their testimonies were clear, steady, heartbreaking. Each told the same story. Whirlwind romance, sudden marriage, asset transfers, abandonment. A pattern carved in stone. By the time Sarah finished, the courtroom wasn't looking at me anymore. They were looking at him. Michael's confident smirk cracked. He shifted in his seat, tugging at his collar, his eyes darting as whispers rose from the gallery. The predator was exposed under the light, and there was nowhere to hide. I kept my eyes on him, my voice calm when the judge finally turned to me. Mr. Clark, do you wish to add anything? I stood slowly, the weight of decades lifting from my shoulders. Your Honor, all I ever wanted was to protect my daughter, to honor the promise I made to my wife. But this man didn't just take my money. He took my daughter's trust. He took my family's dignity. And today, I ask this court to give it back. The room was silent. Even Michael's lawyer looked pale. The gavel came down with a sharp crack. Motion to freeze assets, granted. Civil trial to proceed. Criminal charges to be considered. I sat back down, my chest rising and falling, with something I hadn't felt in months. Not humiliation, not grief, vindication. Michael turned toward me, his eyes narrowing, rage spilling through the cracks of his perfect mask. But, for the first time, he wasn't the hunter. He was cornered prey. And I wasn't done. Not yet. When the judge granted the injunction, the air in the courtroom changed. Michael sat stiff, his jaw tight, his confidence bleeding out of him with every passing second. But it wasn't him I watched. It was Emily. She sat there, pale, her hands twisted together in her lap, eyes locked on the table in front of her. Her wedding ring caught the light, but there was no pride in the way she held it now. Just weight. For the first time since the wedding, I didn't see defiance in her. I saw fear. The judge called for a short recess, and the hum of voices filled the room. I stood, gathering my papers, when I heard it, my daughter's voice. "Dad?" I turned. Emily stood a few feet away, her body trembling, her face blotched with tears she could no longer hold back. Michael stayed seated, glaring, his hand gripping the edge of the table as though daring her to move closer. She ignored him. "Dad, I didn't know it would go this far," she stammered, her voice breaking. He told me if I didn't do what he said, he'd leave, that no one else would ever want me, that I'd be nothing." The words hit me like a hammer. My daughter, my Emily, reduced to this by a man who saw her only as a key to my life's work. I stepped closer, my voice low, controlled. "Emily, why didn't you come to me? Why didn't you tell me?" Her face crumpled. "Because I was ashamed. I thought I was smarter than this. I thought if I admitted I was wrong, you'd hate me." I swallowed hard, my throat tight. Behind her, Michael shifted, his glare sharp enough to cut. He hissed under his breath, "Emily, sit down." But she didn't. For the first time, she didn't obey. Her eyes locked on mine, wide and desperate. "Dad, I thought he loved me. I thought—" Her voice cracked into a sob. "I thought you'd be proud of me for marrying someone like him. Someone from that world you could never give me. And now I see it. I was just another mark." The room quieted around us. Even the gallery had fallen silent, watching the scene unfold like a drama too raw to interrupt. My heart ached with equal parts fury and sorrow. I wanted to reach for her, to pull her into my arms like I had when she was little. But part of me still remembered the sting of her words at the wedding. "You're not invited. Go away." So I stood still, my hands clenched at my sides. "Emily," I said softly, each word deliberate, "you were never nothing. You are my daughter. And no mistake you've made could change that. But you need to understand. Michael didn't just fool you. He tried to erase me. Us. Everything your mother and I built. And now, you have to decide which truth you'll stand with." Tears streamed down her cheeks, but she nodded faintly as if some part of her had been waiting to hear those words. Behind her, Michael's voice snapped like a whip. "Emily, not another word!" But it was too late. The dam had broken. For the first time, she saw him not as a savior, not as a husband, but as what he truly was, a predator who had used her shame as his leash. And as she crumpled into her chair, sobbing openly now, the balance of power shifted in that courtroom, not just in the eyes of the law, but in the eyes of a daughter finally waking from a long, cruel dream. When the court reconvened after recess, the room was no longer balanced. The tide had shifted. Michael sat rigid, his jaw set, but the confidence was gone. Emily remained quiet, her shoulders trembling as she avoided his gaze. Sarah rose first, her calm composure sharper than any blade. "Your Honor, with the testimonies given and evidence presented, we ask that all contested assets be frozen and returned pending the outcome of this trial. These include real estate holdings, financial accounts, and family heirlooms." The judge adjusted his glasses. "Do you have specific items in dispute?" Sarah's eyes flicked to me before she opened a smaller folder. Yes, one in particular was displayed publicly at the wedding reception. She held up a photograph, the one I had taken of Michael's mother wearing Claire's sapphire necklace. The image was clear, damning. Gasps rippled through the courtroom gallery. "This necklace," Sarah continued, "was not Emily's to give. It was passed down from Mr. Clark's late wife Claire as a family heirloom. It was stolen under duress, a symbolic act of erasure. We ask that it be returned immediately." The judge turned his gaze to Michael's mother, who sat stiff-backed, her face flushed with indignation. "Ma'am, do you have this necklace in your possession?" Her lips pressed thin. "It was a gift," she snapped. The judge's tone was flat. "Return it, today." The gavel struck once, sealing the order. As a bailiff moved to collect the necklace, the murmurs in the gallery swelled. People leaned closer to one another, whispering, their eyes flicking toward Michael and his family with open disdain. The same high society peers who had once praised him were now watching his downfall with barely concealed satisfaction. Sarah pressed on. "Furthermore, Your Honor, We have financial records confirming asset siphoning, including the fraudulent transfer of Mr. Clark's lake cabin and the wedding venue property. We ask that these holdings be returned to Mr. Clark's sole ownership until the court rules otherwise. The judge nodded slowly. Motion granted. I could feel the stares drilling into my back, each one a reminder that in their eyes, I didn't belong here. Not as a father, not as family, just an intruder in work boots polished too much for the occasion. I paused at the edge of the ballroom, still clutching the handle of the door. Something in me resisted leaving just yet. I turned my head, just slightly, and that's when I saw her, Michael's mother. She was standing with two other women, her lips curved in that smug smile people wear when they know they've won. Around her neck glimmered the sapphire necklace. My wife's necklace. My gift to Emily, meant to carry her mother's spirit on this day. Seeing it draped around another woman's throat was like watching my wife's memory pawned off for status. I froze. My heart clenched, but before I could even ask how she got it, Emily's voice cut through. "Dad, please," she whispered harshly, her tone edged with panic. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." I turned fully toward her. Assets are to be frozen and reverted pending resolution. Michael exploded. "This is ridiculous. That man is lying." The judge's gavel cracked like thunder. "Enough. Sit down, Mr. Whitmore." For once, Michael did not look like a man in control. He looked cornered, sweating under the weight of evidence, abandoned by the charm that had once carried him. Then Sarah delivered the final blow. "Your Honor, we also submit victim statements from 2 previous cases, nearly identical in pattern. Women deceived, assets transferred, families left in ruins. This is not coincidence. This is a calculated pattern of fraud." The judge studied the documents carefully. "This court takes such allegations very seriously. Mr. Whitmore, you will remain under financial injunction. Criminal investigations will proceed concurrently." The gavel struck again, louder, final. Michael slumped back in his chair, his mask shattered. His parents avoided eye contact, their shoulders drawn tight. The gallery's whispers had shifted now from curiosity to condemnation. He wasn't a charming son-in-law anymore. He was a criminal, exposed under the harsh light of truth. And then it happened. The bailiff placed the sapphire necklace in my hand. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The weight of it was more than gold and jewels. It was Claire's memory. Her blessing returned. I closed my fingers around it, steady but trembling, and for the first time in months, I felt something like peace cut through the storm. Across the aisle, Michael's face twisted, his voice low and venomous. "You'll regret this, all of you." But his threats fell flat, because the world had seen him now. The mask was gone, and only the predator remained, stripped, humiliated, powerless. And I had just taken the first piece of my family's legacy back. The courthouse steps were crowded when the session adjourned, reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing, onlookers murmuring with the thrill of scandal. Michael shoved past them, his jaw clenched, his designer suit wrinkled from the fight he was losing. I followed slowly, the sapphire necklace heavy in my pocket. The noise around us blurred into static until it was just him and me at the top of those granite steps. He spun around, eyes blazing, teeth bared in something between a smile and a snarl. "You'll ruin us all," he hissed, voice low so only I could hear. I stepped closer, close enough that the cameras couldn't catch our words. My voice was steady, the calm after the storm. "No, Michael. You ruined yourself the moment you used my daughter as a weapon against her own mother's memory." He flinched, his anger cracking into desperation. "You think you've won? You think a few court orders will stop me? Emily's mine. She trusts me, not you." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the photograph I had carried since the wedding, the one of Claire wearing the necklace, her smile bright, her eyes alive. I held it up between us, inches from his face. "Look at her," I said quietly. "Look at the woman you tried to erase, every dollar you stole, every lie you told, every ounce of shame you heaped on my daughter. It was all an insult to her, and you will never be man enough to touch her memory again." Michael's bravado faltered. His eyes darted to the photo, then back to me, fury mixing with something sharper, fear. "You're finished," he spat, but the words rang hollow now. I slipped the photo back into my jacket, my gaze never leaving his. "No, Michael, you're finished. You built your life on lies and theft, and now those lies are crumbling. The courts will see it. The world will see it. And Emily. She's already beginning to see it too. He swallowed hard, his fists tightening at his sides. For a moment, I thought he might strike me there on the courthouse steps. But he didn't. He couldn't. Because he knew, as much as I did, that the fight was over. I leaned in one last time, my voice low, cutting through the chaos of reporters' questions and camera clicks. You tried to make me a ghost in my own family, but I'm still here. And when the dust settles, the only ghost in this story will be you. I turned and walked down the steps, the sapphire necklace pressing warm against my palm, Claire's presence steady beside me. Behind me, I heard Michael's voice rise, shouting, furious, incoherent. But the crowd drowned him out. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel humiliated or powerless. I felt something sharper, something stronger. Justice was coming for him, and nothing he shouted on those courthouse steps could stop it. The courthouse had emptied by late afternoon, leaving only the echo of footsteps and the lingering hum of whispers that would travel through the city for weeks. Michael was gone, escorted by his lawyers, his parents trailing behind like shadows stripped of their pride. I lingered outside, the weight of the sapphire necklace in my pocket grounding me. That's when I heard her. "Dad!" I turned. Emily stood near the columned entrance, her face pale, streaked with mascara, her eyes raw from tears. Without Michael beside her, she looked smaller, younger, like the girl who used to sit on the back porch with me eating ice cream straight from the carton. But she wasn't that girl anymore. She was a woman who had made choices that cut deeper than any knife. She walked closer, her voice breaking. "Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't see it. I didn't want to see it. I thought he loved me. I thought I was building something real, and I let him turn me against you." Her shoulders shook, but she kept talking as though confessing were the only way to keep breathing. "I told myself you didn't understand, that you were old-fashioned, bitter. But the truth is I was ashamed that I couldn't admit I'd been fooled. And instead of running to you, I pushed you away." I let her words hang in the air. My heart ached to close the distance, to hold her. But a lifetime of promises and betrayals stood between us now. Finally, I spoke. "Emily, you broke something in me when you turned me away at that wedding. Not because you embarrassed me, but because you chose him over everything your mother and I gave you, over her memory, over family." Her tears spilled harder, but she didn't look away. "I know, and I'll never forgive myself for it. But Dad, please, I don't want to lose you." I stepped closer, my voice steady, though every word carried weight. "You don't lose me by apologizing. You lose me by repeating your mistakes. Trust isn't given, Emily. It's earned. And right now, you have to earn it back." She nodded desperately, like a drowning woman grasping for a lifeline. "Tell me what I have to do. I'll do anything." I drew the necklace from my pocket, holding it up so the sapphire caught the last rays of sunlight. Her breath hitched as she looked at it. "This isn't just jewelry," I said. "It's your mother's blessing, and you gave it away. That can't happen again. If you want to rebuild, if you want me to believe in you again, then you'll have to prove you understand what family means." Her voice shook. "How?" I slipped the necklace back into my jacket. "You'll volunteer for 2 years with organizations that protect the elderly from financial abuse. You'll see firsthand the kind of predators who took advantage of you, and how easily you could have become one yourself by staying silent. And we'll go to family therapy, together. But until then, you're out of my will. Everything goes into trust until you've earned back what you threw away." Emily's face crumpled, but this time, it wasn't shame. It was understanding. She nodded, sobbing. "Yes, I'll do it, whatever it takes." I reached out then, finally, and placed a hand on her shoulder. "This isn't punishment, Emily. It's mercy. I could cut you out completely. But you're my daughter, and I believe there's still good in you worth saving. But it won't come easy. You'll have to fight for it, just like I fought for you." Her sobs quieted into trembling breaths. And for the first time in years, I saw her not as the woman blinded by Michael's lies, but as my daughter again, flawed, broken, but not beyond redemption. Weeks turned into months, and the storm that began with humiliation at a wedding grew into headlines splashed across newspapers and news feeds. Socialite exposed in financial exploitation scheme. Predatory groom faces fraud charges. Michael's name, once polished and charming, became synonymous with deception. His family's reputation crumbled. their friends scattering as fast as their frozen assets. Michael himself faced a long legal road ahead, civil suits from other victims, criminal charges for fraud and forgery. The man who had once smirked at me across a ballroom was now a defendant, shackled by his own greed. As for me, I chose not to linger in his shadow. Revenge, after all, isn't just about bringing someone down. It's about building something stronger from the ashes. The sapphire necklace sat on my desk for weeks before I knew what to do with it. One evening, I polished it carefully, watching the way the stone caught the light. Then, I locked it in a display case at the office of the foundation I had just established, the Clare Foundation, dedicated to protecting families from financial predators. It wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about turning pain into purpose. Every seminar we hosted, every victim we helped, every dollar spent toward education and legal aid, it all carried her name. Claire's legacy would not be reduced to an obituary. It would be a shield for others. Emily kept her word. The child I once carried on my shoulders now stood inches away, her face painted with embarrassment, her green eyes avoiding mine. Those were her mother's eyes, once full of warmth. Now they were as cold as glass. Michael stepped forward again, his hand tightening around Emily's waist, pulling her back like she was a trophy that needed guarding. "Mr. Clark, let's not cause a scene," he said smoothly. "You've already disrupted enough." The words hung in the air like smoke, curling around the crowd. Disrupted. That's what I was now. Not a father, not a man who built every stone of their future with calloused hands. Just a disruption, and the crowd fed on it. I heard the whispers more clearly this time. Why wasn't he invited? She began volunteering at one of the partner organizations, working with elderly victims of fraud. At first I worried it was just penance, but after a few months I saw a change in her. She stopped hiding behind shame and started listening, really listening to people who had been hurt just as she had. We went to therapy together, those sessions full of tears and silences that spoke louder than words. Trust didn't rebuild overnight. It grew slowly, fragile but real, like new grass pushing through cracked pavement. One afternoon, after a long session, she looked at me with eyes swollen from crying. "Dad, I don't deserve forgiveness yet, but thank you for not giving up on me." I squeezed her hand. "You'll earn it, day by day, and that will mean more than any apology." The will remained unchanged, her inheritance and trust, until she proved herself. But for the first time, that didn't feel like punishment to her. It felt like a challenge she was ready to meet. Michael, meanwhile, faded into the background of our lives, his story no longer ours to carry. Justice would take its course, and I didn't need to watch every step. My focus was forward. Standing in the Clare Foundation office one evening, I looked at the framed photo of my wife on the wall. Her smile was soft, timeless, her eyes alive with the same strength I saw flickering back into Emily. I whispered into the quiet, "I kept my promise, Claire. I protected her, not in the way I thought I would, but in the way she needed." For a long moment, I simply stood there, the weight of years lifting, the sharp edges of grief worn smoother by purpose. Betrayal hadn't broken me. It had revealed the truth. Who deserved my trust, who earned my love, and who had only tried to take it. And as I locked the office for the night, the city lights gleaming beyond the windows, I felt peace. Not because I had destroyed Michael, but because I had reclaimed what mattered most: my family, my legacy, my dignity. Maybe there's a reason. Embarrassing,